I feel like the Lord does, he goes ahead of you in ways that you don't even realize. And I'll give you an example of how the Lord goes ahead of me in ways that I don't even realize. He gifts our church. He gives us the gift of somebody who's so sports inclined, like a person like Guy, right? And then he balances it with a person who gives absolutely no rips, like me. It's like you're all experiencing somebody who can be your somebody in church by representation. I was freezing cold this morning, so I put on like my favorite thickest Vato like flannel. And then somebody told me by God's graces that it involves the colors of both teams that are playing today. See how God just goes ahead in his goodness? I alienate nobody in my ambiguity while remaining Hispanic and true to my heritage. Do you see? Full circle. It's like, that's how good God is. We could have communion and you could all go home just after that, understanding. If anything, it gives me an excuse to wear a hat, which I don't know if you realize this, but 99% of the time outside of church, I'm a 1,000% hat person. This is my excuse. I'm going to wear my new favorite hat that Fallon got me. And then go hats. I don't care about sports. Rock and roll. Let's talk about church in Jesus. That's why I came to church. We're in a series called Hard Words, and it's a relationship series, not a relationships series. If this makes any sense to you, the reason why I say it's a relationship series is because it involves all of the core and close relationships that you have. It's not just who you're romantically inclined towards. I want to start for the next couple of weeks thinking through the ways by which God graciously gives us proximity to people in our lives and how we interact in those proximity-based relationships, whether they're romantic or not, whether they're platonic or not, whether they're your siblings or your children, if it's your spouse or if it's your coworkers. There's so much wisdom to be caught in how Jesus walks us through how we navigate relationship in our own lives. Now, for the next couple of weeks, the way that we're going to do this is we're going to be pairing particular words that we use in relationship that sometimes can be difficult depending upon the kind of personality or persona you are. Sometimes they're easy and they flow, but maybe we don't realize the root of them. And my theory was that we would tackle these core concepts in pairs every single week, and then they would be ways or invitations for us to examine kind of what they are and why they are, maybe why they exist, or maybe the lack thereof in our own lives, and how we can bounce those off of Jesus, who we understand Jesus to be in our lives, our Savior, but then how we can fold those open. We can unpack those to the people that are close to us in our own lives. That's my prayer as we step into the next couple of weeks. So we're calling them hard words because not harsh words, not like hard things that you're like, I don't want to say this, but hard words in the sense that there are things that oftentimes require much of us in our communication streams and pathways between one another. If you have been in a relationship for any amount of time in any season of your life, the way that you communicate is like a baseline necessity when it comes to how you share and how you uncover and unpack who you are in relationship to the person that you're in relationship with. The person that you're trying to create and express value to. And Jesus is inside of that pathway as he is such a great communicator through something as simple as the scripture to us about his position for you, his posture towards you, his affection for you. But as I was prepping for this, I was reminded fondly. If you don't know Fallon, like my wife and I, we've been married for 16 years. Few people realize that Fallon and I have the exact same degree. We actually went to the same college. We graduated with a degree in communication and then double majored with like biblical studies. And we use our studies from college every single day in our work. Like I build sermons, I communicate with people for a living. I try to make sense of the Bible and share it and invite people to journey with me. Fallon, in her job, she walks with families as they're navigating the possibility and the potential of adoption. That's what Fallon does for a living. So she uses language and crafts words so that people can better understand like what the process is as they expand their family through the gift of adoption. Now, what we did not realize is that as both of us were earning like our degrees in communication, it would make us like samurai ninjas when it came to engaging with one another when there was conflict. When Fallon and I fight with one another, first of all, we never fight. We only communicate passionately with one another. But when we do, I realize I'm thrown back mostly to the things that we learned in college. We learned like tactical argument approaches in college. When you are a comm major, I leaned into persuasion theory as like my emphasis, because I was like, I'm gonna do some persuading up in this life. Was thinking like radio DJ, like maybe a lawyer, but then I ended up as a pastor. So then I was just like, man, all these things that I'm learning in college, it's gonna be crazy when like whoever I marry. At the time I was dating Fallon, I was like, man, it'll be like a collision of like demigods. When we fight, it's going to be like so upper collegiate level. We don't get at each other around the thing that we're fighting about. We rise to we go above that. We go into like the atmosphere of like social justice theory when we're fighting with one another. So I'm pegging at things that she has a deep-rooted value in her core that she was raised with, and I'm pecking at that stuff. And then she's like, no, you won't. No, I reject that theory and that posture. And then she starts pecking at the things that are at my core value related to something as passionate, as important as like, I don't know, my parents, right? So like we dig deep when we collide and we have collision in our impassioned like position, not arguing. But if I had a picture to show you of what it looked like, because I've been like so wrapped around this like thought for like the last 10 or so days, this is the picture that it looks like when Fallon and I fight, right? So I'm like, you are just like me. And when we are at this, like we're throwing the same tactics at one another. And so we've got to have a baseline that's above us or our expertise. Otherwise, we will like literally dismantle one another with like the abilities that we have to throw words and concepts and theories and history and experiences at one another. It can be pretty dangerous. Now, I had no way of predicting the X factor in our marriage, which was going to be a young child coming into adolescence. This is our soon-to-be 12-year-old oldest son, Bravery. Now, Bravery, this is what I don't realize, is that he has been a quiet student of his mother and I for a hot minute. And so as Bravery has come to term, I've realized in the recent months that Bravery is now shaping his own kind of economy of thought. He is now in a position where he is examining and navigating the posture inside of the relationship with both Fallon and I. He's got a friend group that we know some, we don't know all. He has values that are shaping inside of his sweet little almost 12-year-old body that I'm like, whoa, where did this come from? And then more importantly, who taught you to argue like the way you're arguing with me right now? Because that's not fair. And so as Fallon and I have navigated our own parental position with our growing kids, if you have kids that are older than 12, you're like, Mingo, suck it up. I get it. I totally get it. You got a post-teenager, 20-year-old in your life, you're like, Mingo, it gets way worse than this. Buckle up. I'm just telling you, I've got soft skin and I'm emotional. So I'm like, whoa, this is crazy how this is impacting me. But if I could give you an image depicting my reality of understanding how Bravery has now entered the conversation, and now how I'm having to be dually aware of my words, my posture, my actions, it would look like this, right? I'm like, whoa, we're raising a kid with superpowers up in our house. And so this has been, I think, the reasoning why for the next several weeks, if we go into this conversation about hard words and how the Lord allows us the grace to not just like critically think about the words that we use, but also understand the expectation that Jesus has from us when it comes to the way we communicate with loved ones, I think it'll set us up for some great conversations and some proper time to examine our own relationships, those that the Lord has brought in proximity to us in this season. So I want to give you a big thought around this topic as we dive in. We're going to look at two verses. Really, the first is like our kind of theme verse for this series. And it comes out of Luke chapter 6, verse 45. This is essentially what it reveals. It says, a good person produces good things from the treasury of a good heart. And then the inverse is that an evil person produces evil things from the treasury of an evil heart. But the statement that we want to hang on is the idea that what you say flows from what's inside of your heart. Now, even if you don't have a calm degree that you exercise on a regular basis, you have language rhythms. You have like a pattern of ways by which you act and react when it comes to the people who are closest to you, the people that mean the most to you, or the people who are the most frequent in your life. Now, Paul tells us, the Apostle Paul writes in the book of Ephesians chapter 4, verse 15, he says, speak the truth in love. Now, I'll tell you this with great conviction. It is not difficult to speak truth when it comes to your relationships that are the most important to you. The challenge is when we have to speak the truth in love. Have you ever heard somebody when they talk about like the nuances of their relationship? Fallon and I have done lots of like relationship counseling over the years, and one of the most like off-center like postures and positions to have is when somebody goes like, "Oh, I'm here for our relationship, but I just want to like let you know that I am all about brutal honesty." Anybody like hear those two absolutely toxic, absolutely atomic words like fused together? I'm all about brutal honesty. If you ever hear somebody say that or everybody cling to that in like their own posture, with a lot of grace, you can let them know that per Paul in Ephesians, brutal honesty is so not biblical. He says we've got to have honesty and we've got to learn ways by which we can package them inside of a caring exchange known as love. It's got to be authentic, the way that we express truth. Because if it's not found in love, it's like a frequency that is likely to miss when you're delivering a message to another person. At the end of the day, communication is just messages sent with the hope that they're received with the clarity by which they've been delivered. You can imagine sender or the person speaking something, that is the message being sent. And like radios, like old school walkie-talkies when you're a kid, you can be blaring on your side trying to communicate something, but if the other person is on the wrong channel, they will never hear with clarity the way that you are intending to deliver the message, whatever it is. Babe, please unload the dishwasher, or babe, this marriage is getting harder than I anticipated. No matter how deep or significant or shallow and insignificant the message is, Scripture tells us that we've got to be keen on delivering truth, and we wrap it in love. This is already going to be like deep waters for some of us. I know just by virtue of our church, there are some who are on like rocky roads when it comes to how our relationships have been. Or maybe you've been praying specifically that there would be a breakthrough in your communication habits with the most important people in your life, be it your children or your spouse or your significant other. Today we're going to pursue how Jesus speaks about how we posture ourselves, including words. And we're going to go through these two pairings. The first is the concept of saying thank you, and the other one is the concept of saying love you. Now, as we go through these, like Guy said, I'm going to put one team over here and I'm going to put one team over there. For most people, you'll resonate inside of either the simplicity of being able to verbalize this idea of saying thank you, or you resonate inside of the simplicity of saying, I love you. And there are some people who desire to hear from a significant other appreciation, aka the idea of saying thank you. And there's others of us who deeply desire to be on the receiving end of somebody's affection, aka somebody saying, I love you. And I want to speak not to those words at a surface level, but I'd love to examine through Scripture the depth of what's communicated when we miss on these terms. And then maybe that would be an invitation for us to re-see the way that we experience the goodness that we get from Jesus, but also be a challenge for how we can maybe find a more purposeful approach to how we involve these concepts in our own lives, so that when we are involved in the relationships that mean the most to us, we don't miss on these core concepts that are gifts really from God on how we connect with one another. So, out of the book of Luke, chapter 17, we are going to catch Jesus in an interesting moment as he is gracing 10 individuals with a life-changing healing. And the story that's going to come from this is going to show us where Jesus' expectation for how words and how actions play into one another. And I think it's interesting that we get it from Jesus. I'm going to read it for you, and then I'm going to give you just a few observations. It says this: on the way to Jerusalem, Jesus, was passing along between Samaria and Galilee. And as he entered a village, he was met by 10 lepers. It says, those lepers stood at a distance, and they lifted up their voices, saying, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. You can hold right there. Jesus approaching lepers. Leprosy in Jesus' era and culture at that point is a disease that has no cure. Today we know it's got a cure. It can be treated by medicine. So it's not as stigmatic as it would have been in the New Testament. If somebody was a leper, they were actually, by societal expectations, they were required to be away from the mass of individuals. They would have had to have stayed like at 50 paces from where the crowd would have been. But for the lepers who are spoken of in this story, they know the person of Jesus. They have an expectation of the power of Jesus from what they've heard. And so the Bible says that they're standing at a distance and they're lifting up their voices saying, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. They're trying to speak over the crowd that's in close proximity to Jesus. This is how you know, at least for the cultural setup, that these individuals knew their place when it came to the societal structure. They weren't trying to take a risk and run in. The expectation of culture was like strict and stern about where they were and who they were. Namely, they're outcasts, and namely, they are on the margins of society wherever they go. But they're going to call out to Jesus nonetheless. And the story continues, and it says this: when Jesus saw them, he said to them, go and show yourselves to the priest. And as they went, they were cleansed. Jesus isn't abdicating his responsibility or the request here. Jesus is telling them, go show yourself to the priest, because the only way that you're accepted back into society is if you're given a blessing by the priest in this time to say, yep, you are seemingly clear of this disease. There has been a miracle in the making. You're now able to go and be amongst society. You can re-enter amongst kind of the general crowd. And so Jesus doesn't have like this big, like operatic moment with these individuals. He has other like moments with other people where there's kind of there's a crowd, and there's a moment where Jesus does something that's very specified to the attention of everybody. But in this one, Jesus hears from 10 lepers their desire to be healed, and all he does is tell them, go show yourself to the priest. essentially saying, I'm healing you in the process. I want him to show and prove that things are radically different. And so when he says to them, go and show yourselves to the priest, Jesus is already moving miraculously in their lives, although nobody seemingly senses it except for the 10 lepers. It says, then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice, and he fell on his face at Jesus' feet, giving him thanks. Now, Jesus is going to respond here in an interesting way. Next slide. Jesus notes he was a Samaritan, and then Jesus answered, we're not 10 cleansed? Where are the 9? Kind of like Jesus' posture here. He's like, I thought 10 of you guys got healed. And like, there's 1 coming back, Samaritan, 9 others unaccounted for. Continue to the next slide. It says, was no one found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner? And he said to him, rise and go your way. Your faith has made you well. Interesting posture from Jesus. He is going to not call out to this one. He's not going to use hard words for this one, but he's going to speak hard words for everybody who's going to interact with the effect of this story from the moment it happens all the way through to today when we go through this. This is a story that everybody has had access to. And if you're following along in your notes, I'm going to give you an initial thought to start in this conversation. But if you'd like to just take notes in your phone, you can write this down. To see our relationships grow, for them to mature, we have to speak hard words. In order to see relationships grow, and this is a space where Jesus is looking for growth out of this Samaritan, he's going to speak some hard words. Note that it's not harsh words that need to be spoken, it's hard words. And a lot of times in our humanity, when we want to force an issue, we'll push harsh words to the surface thinking that it's going to do some good or it's going to move the needle. But in reality, Jesus doesn't need harsh words out of our mouths. He needs hard words to be spoken in love. This is such a critical difference, and you've got to see the difference between them, because in our sinfulness, in our brokenness in humanity, we can get worked up to the edge, and where we intend to speak with love, we get moved to harshness because we don't feel like we're being heard accurately, or we feel like what we're saying is not being received with seriousness or with authenticity. So in our humanity, we flip from wanting to speak hard words with love to harsh words indifferently. But Jesus is this great example of somebody who does something great for 10, life-changing. Their life, all the way up until this point, had been on the margins, unaccepted to the society around them. They could not go to the Super Bowl party after church. They couldn't roll through Costco and complain that the lines were 99 people long. They didn't even have that luxury of what you and I would get in everyday interactions with people. For the 10 lepers, they lived their entire life on the outside looking in. The miracle that Jesus does for all 10 of these individuals, including one of the 10 who is identified as a Samaritan, is radically above our comprehension, life-changing. He changes the trajectory for them forever. They can now engage in physical contact with other human beings, which was not the case. You know, there's so many statistics around just how valuable it is to be hugged, to experience physical affection. Fallon and I talk about this all the time with our own kids. Let's make sure we're embracing our kids all the time, because if you don't hug your kiddos, where are they getting that physical affirmation? And you might have 25-year-old kiddos. I'm 42, and I love a good embrace from my own father, right? I love a big ol' hug from my mom, right? This was a new norm for the 10 now healed. And it's interesting, Jesus is going to note, of all 10 that were healed, only one is going to turn back, and he's going to express gratitude. And Jesus is going to make a note about it, and it's funny because I think all the time, I'm like, man, Jesus is God, so it's not like he's like, okay, I perceive these guys are so excited, they're going to go out, they're living their best life now, and like in the movies, they're like, no, go, live your best life, don't even think about me. That's not Jesus in this moment. Jesus is actually pretty clear about what his expectation is. His expectation is, I did something life-changing for you, It would be great to hear from you. Convicting. Because there's so much good that God does in my life. I only usually highlight the really big ones or the ones that I've been over persistent about. And I fail to realize every day God does such good, amazing, I could not do them on my own things in my life. And God in his posture through the person of Jesus, at least in this New Testament story, is like, and there's an exchange, expectation. I love it. But you know what Jesus doesn't do? He doesn't condemn the other 9, but he makes much of the actions of the one who comes and worships. There's some very great illustrative language that's written in this story. It says that one who's a Samaritan, and Jesus is like always keen to point out the Samaritans because everybody who's watching, everybody who's gleaning, they don't like Samaritans. I mean, if you're going to play the sports illustration all through the day, Samaritans are like Raiders fans. Nobody likes them, right? They're harsh, right? They have they drool, right? It's like so cheap. It's such a cheap illustration. Samaritans are despised individuals because they are not seen as insiders. They're seen as people who don't have God's blessing on their life. So it shocks everybody in visible closeness to this miracle that the person who would seem to be the least thankful or the least appreciative or the least worshipful because they've not been in church or in the culture of knowing how to interact with somebody as massive and as holy as the person of Jesus, it's just shocking that it's the person who's the runaway, the dropout, the person who nobody expects anything good from to be the person who gives the most praise when there's an opportunity to kind of do anything you want. There's something to grab a hold of here in our own lives. So for me, I've walked long with Jesus since I was in high school. And I've sometimes gotten used to just being like, that's how good he is. He just rolls with me. I can expect that when there's a gap, he's going to fill it, and it feels good, and I can point to it, and it's awesome. But my praise can be inauthentic and even sometimes non-existent because I've just gotten so used to the covering of a good Heavenly Father. And I don't want to be that in my natural order of things. I want to be like, Lord, every little from whether we say it sometimes in our staff meetings, and it was said to me early, in my 30s, celebrate and give God praise on every stepping stone as if it's a massive milestone. Anytime you see something small that is good, that was beyond you and your ability, that is a moment to celebrate and praise God, even if it's a stepping stone, as if it's a massive milestone in your life. Now, the inverse of this and what we get for the observation of the 9 who said nothing, who did not come and give Jesus praise, it speaks much. And this is what I want to give you as some handles to walk away with, maybe just as we start in this conversation around this idea of thankfulness and this idea of expressing love. The first is unexpressed appreciation oftentimes communicates ingratitude. Unexpressed appreciation oftentimes communicates ingratitude. I think that Jesus is displaying a sense of identifying that there's a lack of gratitude from 9 that he did much miracle work in, where there's only really gratitude display in 1. Now, for us in real time, you and I in our everyday lives, you might say to yourself, I'm a pretty grateful person. I appreciate that person mentally. I think through things. But there's such a big difference that Jesus is going to point out in the sense that this one leper healed comes back and falls at the feet of Jesus and worships and says, you changed my life. There is an audible, he says that he shouts his praise at the life-changing moment that God intervened in his life. For us, I think that there's plenty of us that would say, yeah, I'm pretty grateful. I'm grateful for my significant other. I'm grateful for the things that I'm going through when it comes to relationships. But it's a great time to take inventory to ask yourself, are you audible when it comes to your gratitude? Because if you're not audible, especially on a wavelength the way that the person that you're grateful for would receive that message, you might be missing and building up a resentment or building up a perception of ingratitude because you're not keenly delivering that message in the wavelength and in the package that the person you want to express gratitude would receive. Does that make sense? They're like, a lot of people either making really good contact with me or not making contact at all. And you're like, I'm thinking about this, and it's important. It's so important because the Lord has given you the capacity to speak and build others up in his name through his Spirit. And sometimes in our humanity, we're so centered on ourselves and our own satisfaction that we miss this moment to speak gratitude, thankfulness to other people. And the effect is when we don't do it, we speak ingratitude when we don't express our appreciation. It's a big deal. It's a gap that happens much in our worlds relationally that builds up an unintended resentment that the Lord never wanted to be in your life or in your relationships between one another. That's what happens when unexpected appreciation comes to the table. When it's unexpressed, it communicates ingratitude. Now, the second part of this is unexpressed love communicates indifference. Unexpressed love communicates indifference. For the people, the 9 that went away, there was seemingly an indifference laid out that they did not take stock in the moment how significant that miracle was in their lives. And it doesn't say that later down the road they came to their terms. It doesn't say later down the road they realized how impactful that moment was and they came back. Some wrote like books, others changed critically their lives. They made an impact on society. All of those things could have been true. But in the moment, Jesus is asking, man, it would be fantastic to experience the exchange of miracle, life change, and worship, expression of love. That's actually why I love being in church so much. When we worship together, I want to cancel the sermon because what it does is it gets room. It makes space for us to have an exchange where there is affection and love declared, which means that we're not indifferent about a radical Savior in our lives. We're not indifferent about the goodness of God put on display, enveloping me unexpectedly in this moment. It's so powerful. It's so necessary. And it doesn't have to be shouting and flags flying and like people doing bacon on the ground. You know, it doesn't have to be all weird like that. It can just be your authentic words coming out of your mouth, audibly saying, thank you, Lord. I love you, Lord. Now, you might not be a big I love you person. I understand that. I, on the other hand, am like an I love you varsity player. Like if I've been on the patio with you at any particular moment in time, I will just rattle out to you on your way out, I love you, but it's not because I am flippant with those words. I understand the depth and more importantly, the absence of that declaration over people's lives. Now, sometimes that has gotten me in big trouble. Nico goes to a speech therapist every single week. 2 times a week, and she's a sweet girl, fantastic skills, does not know who I am at like a core, like real specific. She knows I work at a church, but she doesn't know I'm like doing this, right? So when she just 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, I was like hearing her report for Nico and just what they've been like championing and doing and like successfully developing in Nico. And when we were leaving, I was like, I love you. And she was like, taken back. And I realized as it came out of my mouth, like, thank you so much. I appreciate it so much, Kat. I love you. And I was like, Fallon's not here. I'm Nico's dad. You might think I'm making a move on you. So I went straight home and I was like, Fallon, I told Nico's speech therapist I love her. And to me, it was because I understand her expertise and what it's doing. I'm so grateful for like her purposeful, intentional investment in my son. But man, it just came out of me because I see the good that it's doing in my son's life. Now, she probably gets like gift cards and like she gets like high note reports from other parents. But I was like, no way, dude, I'm telling this girl I freaking love her. So, So it happened. It came, and it hasn't bitten me in the butt yet. She hasn't like filed a report or like told me that I can't drop Nico off anymore. But the reality is that like I want to be somebody who expresses love because I'm so keen on what people do in and around my family, in and around my community. I love what God is doing, and I want to be somebody who communicates the depth of that appreciation. I don't want to be seen as indifferent. So if you stack these two things up, if you measure yourself, am I somebody who is consistent with the way that I show appreciation and communicate it? Am I somebody who's consistent in the way that I communicate and show the fact that I love people? Or are there spaces where I'm lacking in either of those two categories? The greatest detriment is if you are inconsistent and if you are not attentive to both of these in your relationships. Because if you have ingratitude and indifference, what it actually communicates is like a total rejection. And maybe there's a space in your relationship recently where there's been a void of gratitude, there's been a void of affection or the verbal exchange of how much you are loved or how much you love. And what you may not realize is that you are without action communicating rejection. I actually don't need you. I actually can do all this stuff. I can find this fulfillment. I can be completely whole without you. Now, this has two implications. It's got one that's directed at your Savior. It's vertical, where you may not have even realized, man, if I don't audibly say thank you, if I don't audibly have gratitude in my life, pouring out of my mouth and of my posture and of my actions, if I don't verbally say thank you to God, if I don't verbally communicate these things, even though he knows all things, per Jesus and the 10 lepers, his desire is to be worshiped. His desire is to be spoken affectionately towards. His desire is to be poured out gratitude on the receiving end. It may be that that's a space where the Lord wants to mature you in your relationship with him. Then the impact of that can aim at the people that are around you laterally. So see, it starts first vertically. Then the impact can impact laterally. Man, there are people in my life. I need to be more consistent with expressing my love, more consistent with expressing my gratitude. That's why we're going to finish with communion. I've got this bottom line thought, and it'll be an actionable item for you for the rest of the day and maybe the rest of the week, and it's this. Be the one who goes back to express gratitude and love to the one who enables you to move forward. That's pretty broad, right? Be the one who goes back to express gratitude and love to the one who enables you to move forward. For every single one of us, Jesus is one of those key players. Whether you are realizing it just now or you've walked along with the person of Jesus, he is the one who helps you move forward. But there are other people in your life that you can bring into this moment and go, Lord, help me see, and more importantly, help me speak and act in a way that would communicate your heart, even if it's flawed through me. And it might be awkward, and it may not have happened in a long time. You may not have had these kind of depth in communication exchanges with people in a long time, but maybe this is a place where the Lord is drawing you in. Be the one that goes back to express gratitude and love to the one or the ones who have enabled you to move forward. We're going to take communion together, and I'll invite the band up as we prep for this. Because communion is a moment to express gratitude, where Jesus' invitation is real simple. He says, when you do this, you're doing this in remembrance of me. You're taking time to think through the ways by which I have critically changed your life or created an opportunity for your life to be critically changed. And when he gathered with 12 around a dinner table, he took common items and elements that they would have access to all the time so that there would be a consistent reminder of this unbelievable miracle. Jesus' life sacrificed in exchange for my freedom. He would have taken bread and he would have broken it and said, this represents my body broken for the sins of many. And I guarantee you, everybody at the table would have thought about the sins that they had wrestled much with that they had not spoken about, or the sins that they had wrestled with just the day before as they were prepping for dinner or getting through their day. They would have been thinking specifically about the things by which they were not proud of. And Jesus, knowing every single thing in every single heart, said, yeah, I know, but I love you this much. My body will be broken, and it's because I know you need a Savior. And so when we take this, we thank God for his sacrifice. In the same way, we've taken a very common element of wine, passed it around the table, and said, this represents a new covenant where my blood is enough. It covers. There's no more need for a sacrificial system, a sacrificed animal for bloodshed to be poured out. It will happen once for every sin that was and every sin that will be. And he goes to the cross willfully, meaning he desires to see you reconciled back to him. So we take this in remembrance of him. And as we finish, my encouragement to you is to think through and take stock in who Jesus is in your own life, and be thankful and grateful and express love as we close in worship together. And then as you exit this place, be thinking about critically how you express that to the people that God has put in your life purposefully. What does it look like to walk with the essence of Jesus as you speak boldly and confidently to the people that you love the most? And maybe the people that you don't love very much. Let's stand and let's worship together.